All right. Good afternoon and happy Sunday, everybody. It is the Trichology Collective coming live to you all because we want to have some liver talk with you guys. What would your liver say about your health? Are you experiencing hair loss as a result of imbalances with your liver and you don't really know that this could be the direct cause? So we're going to be having some really good conversation this afternoon with myself and my teammates, the Trichology Collective, Miss Dania Durden. How are you today?
Good.
Miss,
How are you?
I'm good. Miss Nicola Forbes Martin, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How's everybody?
Pretty good.
Let's
So
see.
looks like I lost a little bit of lighting here. And so you guys, we're going to be having an open discussion, a much needed discussion about some things that's happening with our health and wellness that may be silently keeping our body out of homeostasis, which could be silently interrupting your hair growth cycle. So I want to tell you a little bit about myself before we get started. My name is Kai Smith, also known as your hair loss advocate. I have been in the beauty industry nearly 3 decades. I am the founder of the American Academy of Hair and Scalp Diseases, where we certify beauty pros to become trichologists. I am the creator of ID Hair Loss Behind the Chair, where we help hairstylists and barbers identify hair loss behind the chair and to help their customers prevent and really, I don't necessarily want to say heal, but rebalance their hair health when they are coming with hair and scalp maladies behind the chair. And I'm passionate about helping women identify the unknown factors about their hair loss. So I want to introduce to you my team as well. Dania, can you give them a little background on yourself?
Yes, I am Dania, the owner of Salon Nia Sade in Atlanta, Georgia. I have been in the industry for 9 years as a cosmetologist and almost a year as a certified trichologist. This is all I know. I love absolutely everything to do with hair, and I am now known as a scalp detective.
All right. And welcome today, Nicola. Can you give them a little background on yourself?
Absolutely, Kai. I'm Nicole Martin. 26 years of experience in the beauty industry as a salon owner, as an educator, um, and a trichologist. So I've been doing a little bit of everything in the business. I am your hair loss MVP.
All right. So you're going to be talking to a detective, an MVP, and an advocate today, y'all. Y'all heard me? So we just kind of want to keep it light. We want to keep it light talk. We don't necessarily want to make it too heavy, but we also want you to understand the severity of your body when it's imbalanced. And it's just not your hair loss. It's really more so the language your body is speaking that is so much greater that could be a matter of life or death for you when you're just minimizing it or isolating it to hair loss. So we just kind of want to go through, outline some things as we discuss the liver today. And with that, hopefully your takeaway will help you make better choices in your day-to-day lifestyle, help you probe your doctor better. And if you still need support after listening to today's talk, you can connect with either one of us to support you in your journey as you're trying to really figure out where the root issue is with your hair loss, or if you understand what kind of hair loss you've been diagnosed with already, but you're still not getting the results that you desire. You're still not really feeling dealing in prescription-based drugs and you want something more natural, more holistic. You are looking at three holistic health practitioners on this panel today. So we definitely we definitely are competent enough to be able to support you and go the distance as you recover from hair loss and or your scalp malady. So let's see. We're going to start off with the first question. We like to do things in question-based formality because it just kind of helps us track a little easier, a little bit more organized during this process. But please, you guys, if you are joining us on the live broadcast or if you're joining us on the replay, type your questions in. If we're not asking the questions that you have or things that you're curious about, please feel free to ask us whatever questions you have, and we will be sure to answer them. If we can't answer them during this broadcast, we will definitely circle back around and answer them. So let's talk about what overworks the liver, because I think that, pretty much we all understand that we have a liver. We may not understand the role of the liver in its fullness, but we're going to talk about some things that we're doing wrong, because pretty much nobody's doing it all right. So let's talk about the things that we're doing wrong, and we'll end with things that we can do to make this a little bit better and to love our liver, be kind to our liver a little bit more. So let's start it off. Nicola, Dania, what is your take on what overworks the liver?
Honestly, as I studied, I'm like, Jesus, we really do make our liver work hard. I read somewhere, it was like the liver is the hardest working person you know. Mm-hmm. But processed foods, excessive amounts of alcohol, sugars, constantly, those 3-4 cups of coffee a day that a lot of us have either drunk in the past or drink daily, our liver it can't do its function properly with all of that on top of it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And growing up, especially like in our households, all the things that we're raised on affect our liver.
Completely agree. The Kool-Aid, you have to have dessert after dinner every time.
Yes.
So in like my grandfather, he had to have the rest of the ice cream with milk on top of it after his meal, and so he passed away from diabetes complications.
Wow.
So something like that is, it brings home the habits that our family normally do, and we have to be mindful not to do it. But I'll add to that too, if you're not resting well, if you're not sleeping, you're not resting, your liver needs time to detoxify itself, to regenerate itself. So if you're not resting well, lifestyle, even overnight workers can have issues because they're not resting. So that's another piece to the liver as well, and what affects it.
So just looking at what overworks the liver, you guys, is just your lifestyle as a whole. We need to take things into consideration. We need to factor in, first of all, what's on the tip of our fork. What are we eating? Because I think that we've only really looked at certain illnesses as affecting specific body systems or organs, but we've always really isolated the liver cirrhosis or fibrosis to cirrhosis of the liver or fatty liver. And we always were taught that typically a person that has cirrhosis of the liver or any kind of liver complications is a person who's an alcoholic. That's what we relate to, cirrhosis of the liver to, or fibrosis of the liver. And I think that, with how we're moving as Americans, I can only speak of America because I live in America and I'm an American, and I really look at stats about Americans, but we have become very, very unhealthy. Our food is not the same as it used to be when our parents or our grandparents or great grandparents were coming along. So things are grown differently. Even when it comes out of the ground, it's void of a lot of vitamins and minerals that it should have. And then the way we cook them, it detracts from them even more. And then a lot of the foods that are placed in our faces on a day-to-day basis, especially when we are fast-paced living, and we don't have a lot of time, especially as a hairstylist, you guys. Come on, we live one of the most fast-paced lives, being behind the chair, not scheduling lunches and things like that, or eating fast, just trying to run and grab something quick. We multitask a lot. So it's not just us, but people, period. We take on so many things into our schedule every day that really doesn't leave us a lot of time to prepare organic meals that don't come in a box or don't come in some kind of packaging. And I think people misconstrue processed foods with fast foods only. They figure if I'm not eating fast foods, I'm not eating processed foods. But if you're eating anything in a package, it's typically a processed food that has preservatives in it, that has toxins in it, that's going to require your liver to have to break these things down. And so overrunning the liver doesn't just consist of eating a lot of processed foods. It also, like Nicola said, it consists of getting enough rest, because if you don't get enough rest, then your adrenals are running a little low. Your adrenals are, definitely going to require more cortisol and more sugar to be released for us to keep up, to get the energy that we're not providing it through our foods. And, when we're not resetting the body clock, if you will, and getting enough rest. So I think because we've been taught, when we go to conventional health practitioners, we've been taught, so to speak, how to compartmentalize the body and how to look at our body systems as separate systems, but not as a whole. And when we look at it as a compartment, this system, this gland, this and this, we look at it like, well, I don't drink a lot of alcohol, so my liver should be good.
So far from the truth.
I get enough rest, so my liver should be good. I don't fall in that category. But it's not one thing, guys. We got to go down and we got to check the boxes. And we got to look at everything as a whole. So we can't compartmentalize the body systems, if you will, and say, well, I have a liver problem. So what does that really mean? How did that really happen? Or I have a thyroid problem only, so that means that my liver is not involved in that. Or I have reproductive issues only, so my liver is good. My liver isn't involved in my reproductive hormone, reproductive hormones, if you will. So all of those statements that I just made are very untrue, and that's why I related them that way. Oh, I'm just having kidney stones. but my liver is okay. Oh, I'm having gallstones, but my liver is okay. All of these things, all of these health complications that we have, they didn't just start overnight. It's habitual, it's repetition that ends up detracting on a day-to-day basis, and accumulatively it starts causing deficiency. So many different things can overrun the liver. Not eliminating your poop on a day-to-day basis like you're supposed to can overrun the liver, because the liver is an excretory system, and what's not excreted builds up in the blood. And the liver is one that actually it creates its own immune system, if you will, because it is what protects the whole body. I know we've been taught like the gastrointestinal system is the end all be all, because if all illnesses start in the gut, then the gut has to be the most important organ. Yeah, that is true to a certain extent. But when you start looking at things functioning as a whole together, every single piece of the body plays its own role. It has its own responsibility. And when one body system is not doing something, it will overwork the other body system because things are not in alignment. Get a flat tire in your car and see how well your car is going to drive you. See how far you're going to get if you have one flat tire. Each tire is one on its own. They sit in four completely different places on the car, but they all play a role as a team. And the liver is one that it detoxifies the whole body. So if you got a problem going on in one body system, you got to know that it's making the liver lose gas. So every single choice that we make affects our liver. And we'll get more into that as we continue to talk. If you guys have your questions, please post them inside of the chat so that we're able to see your questions. What role does the liver play in digestion, you guys?
The liver actually creates or produces the bowel that's needed for the gallbladder to be able to work as well. Like you said, it works as a part of a team. So if the liver isn't functioning properly, then the bowel is either not produced or overproduced. So that's a whole problem within itself.
Right, right. You want to add anything to that, Nicola?
I mean, so just to add what Dania said, really, but what I thought when I did even more research, it's so fascinating how the liver works to consistently secrete bile. It's stored in the gallbladder, so it's always working to make sure you have it. So as digestion happens, the gallbladder releases the bile, and so it uses what it needs, and then the bile salts regenerate and go right back to the liver. So it's a cyclical. It was fascinating to me how the body works, how it will reuse some part of what's not used in digestion, bring it right back up and circle out and make it work. So to me, it's fascinating how it works in that manner. But it works to digest fats.
And it's interesting to me because I'll go even a little further with the digestion. When you're looking at the liver, because it's known as the hepatic system, and you look at the hepatic portal and the ducts that are on this hepatic portal that connects it to the digestive system and other body systems, you're looking at the liver detoxifying the blood in the body. You're looking at the liver with the bile production that's helping to break down foods in the small intestines. You're looking at the liver as the chemical factory for the entire body, because as the digestive system is breaking down the foods through the chemical portion of digestion, the liver is assisting in that, because the liver is going to produce the bile. The gallbladder is where this is stored until it's needed. But as the liver is doing this, the liver also, after the gastrointestinal system breaks this food down and it's broken down into small enough form for the body to be able to use it, the liver actually takes all of the raw material from that food that has been digested and broken down, and then it creates all of the chemicals necessary to be used throughout the body. So if the liver is not functioning right, if the liver is where all of the raw materials are originating, and then they're being built and creating hormones and things like that, vitamins and stuff that we need to be dispatched from the hepatic system, what does that say if your liver is very, very sluggish? Would you think that is going to have a problem throughout all of your body systems if the raw material starts in the liver after it's been broken down in the digestive system?
Absolutely.
It's a trickle down effect. One thing, like you say, is going to affect the next. So there's so many different things that affect it. I mean, just being lethargic, having digestive issues. You don't even know where to start, because there's so many moving parts of how the liver would affect it. So it's almost frightening that we don't take care of the liver like we should.
And right. So I just think it's really, really interesting how we downplay the liver. The liver has over 500 functions. It's actually more than that. It's actually more. It's 500 that is known that the liver actually is in charge of. And so it's interesting to me how we downplay, or we do not speak on the liver as much as we speak on the gastrointestinal system. You know, when you start looking at the liver overall and you look at its responsibilities and you look at if there isn't food being absorbed and digested, you know, correctly in the gastrointestinal system, first off, it can't give the raw material to the liver, second of all. So when you start looking at all of these processes to see how they're interrelated, they might be separate systems, but they're interrelated. It's just really interesting to me, and it blows my mind whenever I sit back and I continue to study and I read more and more to be able to help customers who are experiencing hair loss. So I just kind of want to bring this back to hair loss, if you will. And as we're talking about what overruns the liver, and as we've looked at, you know, the liver's role in digestion, because the liver is a major player when it comes to digestion, as is the pancreas, as is the stomach. These are all the major components of, digestion. And when you look at how that relates to hair loss, if we recognize the liver as being the organ that is where all of the raw materials are housed, is where the chemical factory exists. If you don't have a chemical factory, you have nothing, right? So if you have an organ that's so overrun, but you're having thyroid issues, but you're having gastrointestinal issues, but you're having kidney issues, you're having all of these other issues that the doctor has not discussed with you, that plays a major role in the functionality of your liver. And then we wonder why we're losing our hair. We wonder why we're experiencing, scalp maladies. And it's because the liver is like a main excretory system. Its job is to protect the body. The gastrointestinal system job is to take in the food, to break it down to a small enough form for the body to receive nutrients on a cellular level, but it still has to bypass the liver in order to do that, because there's so many vitamins and minerals needed, so many hormones that are dependent up on receiving vitamins and minerals to be created, but all of this happens in the liver. So how could the liver not be a major player? How could the liver be so overlooked in the process of us being healthy is what my question is. So when we look at that as it relates to hair loss, when we start getting so many deficiencies, or it may not be a deficiency, it could be that the body is in a hyper state. We always want to look at the liver as well, because whether we're in a hypo state, meaning not producing enough, or just not enough, or a hyper state, having too much of, we still want to look at the functionality of the liver, because it's a major player in the body's homeostasis.
Right.
So let's look at, how would a person know if their liver is struggling? What are some symptoms that we can share on this live broadcast for people who, and I always like to look at symptoms. Let me go back. I always like to look at symptoms, because even though we know how the body is functioning, right? Most times the body is not functioning the way God intended for it to function, because we are just not perfect people. Our body is just not functioning perfectly. We want it to be optimal, but it's not perfect. So I like to talk in symptomatic language, because that is a language that people can identify with more, because they will compare the checklist to what their experiences are, and then they can find themselves, they can identify themselves with some of these symptoms to even see if there's any issues to begin with. So you guys want to elaborate or expound on some of the symptoms that a person could possibly be identifying with if their liver is kind of struggling?
So if their liver is struggling, you notice boil in their stools, and you may notice jaundice. So it's a yellowing of the skin, the fingertips, or the nails. You may notice that as well. So those are the main ones that you'll notice if your liver is not functioning properly. Fingertips, nails, oil in the stools, and yellowing. Even yellowing in the eyes at times can be also observed with liver disorder.
Even like skin rashes, acne, brown spots, which are also referred to as liver spots, irritable bowel syndrome. Like you said, it works to help the body. So when the toxins, or when the liver can't work properly, it has to find ways, your body has to find ways to release all that's not supposed to be in there.
Absolutely. Another thing that I want to add is nausea. Nausea is something that you look at if you look at your eating, and you're starting to notice certain sensitivities where you're getting nauseated, things like that. A lot of times people are getting nauseated because there's so many toxins built up in the bloodstream that it's making you sick. It's making you nauseated. Another thing is say for instance, if you you go to bed at a decent hour at night, right? Maybe you go to bed at 9 or 10, but you find yourself waking between 1 and 3 a.m. You don't have complete sleep. There's interrupted sleep patterns during the night. So if you're waking up between 1 and 3 a.m., you know, and you're just like, I don't know why, I just automatically wake up. Those are the hours that the liver detoxifies itself. And so if there are any imbalances with you and you find yourself waking up between the hours of 1 and 3 a.m. and you don't know why, there could be, it doesn't necessarily have to be liver disease or anything like that, but definitely some imbalances with how the liver is functioning that may or may not even come up on a blood test. But there's so many signs because we don't want to put so much pressure on the blood test. The body is a gauge in and of itself. You just have to understand how to relate to your body. And so many times have we normalized certain situations, certain symptoms, because we didn't always used to do this. And now all of a sudden I'm doing this and I'm mentioning this to my doctor, and then they don't really have an answer or a rhyme or reason. They tell me I'm okay, or I just start normalizing things, or, you know, I don't think it's really a big deal, or my mom or my dad or my cousin or my friends, or I know other people that are having this situation. So it must be normal. It's common. So you dismiss it or you normalize this. You have to pay attention to the body when it starts doing something that is abnormal to you, because we are made equally, but we respond to things in the environment within our body, medication, foods. We respond to those things completely differently, you know, from one another. So you can't normalize your experience based on somebody else's experience. So really understanding and being in tune with your body, knowing when some things shift and change and there's some disturbances, even if your blood work is coming back okay, it just may not be to the point where it's showing on the blood work, but it is starting to happen, but it's not registering on the blood work. So if you're waking between 1 and 3 a.m., that is a sign. If it's consistent, that is a sign that your liver is starting to struggle. If you're nauseated, that's a sign. If you get rashes out of the blue, or you have pruritus, you're just itching consistently for no reason, nothing's there, and you're itching all the time, that's a sign of your liver, because you have dermatoxins on your skin. The dermatoxins that are being released through the pores on your body as a result of what's backed up in the liver is causing you to itch. You just can't see it. It's called dermatoxins. You know, when you look at acne on your face, when you look at all of these different things, yellowing of your eyes with the buildup of bilirubin in the liver, that's because it's not being detoxified correctly. The liver is the body's detoxification system. One of them. It's not the only excretory system. The kidneys is another excretory system, but the bile is there to push out waste as it goes through the digestive process through your feces. The kidneys is there for you to push out waste through your urine, So the body is set up, just so amazing, and it will work for you if you don't overwork it. It will work for you if you don't overwork it. Ladies, is there anything else you'd like to add to what I said?
For sure, Kai. Vomiting also, that will happen. And if you're having any kind of liver disorder and you're eating a high fatty food, vomiting can happen. That happened to my grandmother prior to them removing her gallbladder. It's conversations that I'm now having with my mom as I study and I learn more. She's like, oh yeah, your grandmother had that before. So she had vomiting, like violent vomiting, and it would always happen after she ate some kind of pork, stewed pork, and things like that. So the high fat content in the pork made her vomit, and subsequently they actually removed her gallbladder.
So, why does a person with type 2 diabetes have more difficulty with an optimally functioning liver?
But with type 2 diabetes, there's an issue with the excess amount of blood glucose, and it's either that or not enough insulin to actually bind with the glucose in the blood. But typically, there's just a insufficient amount, an excessive amount of blood glucose that's in the bloodstream, and it's also taxing the liver, because the liver does help to process that blood glucose into energy. So the excessive amount is taxing the actual liver because of the diabetic condition of the individual.
Anything you want to add to that?
I just thought it was interesting that 50% of people with type 2 diabetes have this problem.
So let's dig deeper into this. Let's look at the liver and the fact that the liver, we've been taught by conventional medicine, and I'm coming to just dispel myths because we really need to get our health intact. When you are a diabetic, the biggest concern that the doctor has, they tell you to stop eating so many carbohydrates. They tell you to stop eating so many carbohydrates because the body doesn't know how to metabolize sugar. And here's the interesting thing is that when you don't have carbohydrates, the body's secondary source for energy is going to be lipids, which definitely is digested through the liver, right? That's the purpose of the bile. The bile is going to break down, bile salts will break down all of the fat that you eat. So it's really not that you should stop eating the carbohydrates. What's happening, you guys, is that when the liver is being overrun, because most times it's our poor eating habits that have us in this space. We're eating, lots and lots of foods that are high in fat. And then, Lord help us, we have people who decide that they're going to do the keto diet. So we have high protein diets. So the liver has to be able to break down those proteins and those fats. Plus all of the other things, you're putting all of these lotions and these perfumes and inhaling all of these cleansers in your house and all of the air fresheners in your house. And then you go out there and you inhale all the environmental toxins that you don't have control over. You eat and ingest all of the herbicides and pesticides and hormones and, all of these things that disrupt the endocrine system. You go out and this is our life, right? Well, the liver has to deal with that. The liver is getting beat up every single day by every single choice we make or don't make, because we can't choose the air we breathe when we go outside, right? Once the meat is slaughtered and it's brought into the grocery store, we can't choose what's happened to that meat. They could tell us organic, they could tell us this and that, but we don't know what's happening. So there's certain things that we just don't have control over when we are living, right? So after the liver has broken down and tried to detoxify, but we're still overeating processed foods or, fats, heavy foods with fats and, proteins. It's not the sugar that causes the problem. It's all of the other stuff in our lifestyle that causes the problem. The sugar just sounds the alarm that the liver is not working, because the liver houses all of the stored glucose. And so the liver has to dispatch. So if a person is having type 2 diabetes, their body can't regulate how it uses sugar. But let me just tell y'all, if y'all got type 2 diabetes in the first place, the reason why y'all have it is not because of how much sugar you eat. It's because of how overworked your liver was in the first place. That's why you have the type 2 diabetes, right? So it's not just because you eat so much sugar. It's all of the other stuff that you're doing too. But they tell you to stop eating the sugar so that they can get your blood sugar under control. But as soon as you eat a fruit, your blood sugar is spiked. Where do you know that they tell you that you shouldn't eat fruit? Fruit is one of the things that has all of the most natural vitamins and minerals that your body needs to receive in order to be healthy. Where else are you going to get it from besides your fruits and your vegetables? Where are you supposed to get it from? So all of vitamins and minerals that come from your fruit, and the doctor is telling you that you now cannot eat the fruit because you're diabetic. Where are you supposed to get the rest of this from? But they didn't tell you to stop eating all the heavy fats, but they want to prescribe you a statin drug to control the cholesterol that's going to build up in your blood. But they never told you to stop taking Stop eating so many fats, but they give you the high cholesterol pill. Come on, y'all, think about it. It's not the carbs that you should stop eating. It's all of the heavy fats that you should stop eating, so that your liver can have the opportunity to detoxify itself. It can't detoxify itself if it's too busy secreting bile and trying to break down all of the other lard that you're eating, or all of the other heavy fatty meats that you're eating. I'm not telling you to be a vegetarian, vegan, or a pescatarian. What I'm saying is choose wisely when you eat your meats.
Right.
Making sure they're organic and lean. Right? So the liver don't have time to detoxify because you're overwhelming it with what's on the tip of your fork. So all of this stuff starts building up. You keep putting on the lotions and the perfumes and all the other smell goods and fragrances in your house and all the bleach and all the masks during COVID and all of this stuff. And we wondering why our liver is sluggish silently, because we don't know until we know. We don't know until we typically work with somebody like myself or the ladies on this panel to tell you the reason why all of this is happening is because your liver is not functioning properly. Right? So a person with type 2 diabetes is already having liver issues. That's why they have type 2 diabetes. But then when we're prescribed metformin and we're prescribed statin drugs to help us with our liver function, right? They tell you to stop eating the fruits, but they don't tell you to stop eating the fat. So you're still overworking your liver, even though you're not eating the fruits. And this is why you can't even have an orange and enjoy it without spiking, or an apple or a banana without spiking, because you have not removed the things that really cause your liver to be overrun in the first place. And you're wondering why you can't process carbohydrates. It's because of all of the other stuff that your liver is processing. It's not the carbohydrates that's sending you, over the cliff. It's the fats. It's the keto diets. It's stuff like that that's sending you over the cliff. Gotta learn how to eat a well-balanced diet and not overwork the body. And even when the body, and a lot of times, you guys, we do things like, when we go on our detoxes and we want to still get protein and stuff, in our body, we'll eat nut butters. We'll put nut butters and stuff in our smoothies. I've been guilty of doing the same thing. But nut butters are, they have a lot of fat in them. So a lot of times when the liver is so overrun, you can't even afford to put a good fat in it, because it's still going to work it and tax it because it's overrun. So you got to reset the liver. You can't keep bogging it down with something that it has to process because it's already overrun and it's already sluggish. So a person with type 2 diabetes is already in trouble because the liver houses the stored sugar, and it has to release in order for us to have energy. The first thing to be broken down when we eat is glucose. If you're not eating any kind of carbohydrates, if you're staying away from your starches because your doctors told you can't have a lot of carbohydrates, you're making your body work harder to find a source of energy. And you're already in a deficit, and your liver is already being sluggish. So you're making the body work harder in order to find a source of energy on a cellular level to carry out the necessary processes for the body to remain balanced and in homeostasis, right? So if the body is not using sugar well, because the liver is in jeopardy, the liver is what protects the pancreas. So the reason why the pancreas is becoming you're becoming insulin resistant is because the pancreas has now been exposed because the liver is overworked, and now the pancreas is in jeopardy. So it can't produce how it's supposed to produce. So it's not matching the insulin per blood sugar level. So now instead of the insulin being bound to the sugar that the liver is secreting, the sugar is building up in the bloodstream because the sugar can't get over into your cells until after it's bound to insulin. But if the liver is overworked and the pancreas is now in jeopardy, the pancreas can't do its job because it's too busy trying to fight for other things. It can't do its job because The pancreas has two different functions in the body: a digestive function to secrete digestive enzymes, and an insulin function for endocrine function, for us to be able to uptake sugar into the blood for us to get energy. But if it's busy over here secreting these enzymes because you are overloading it and overworking it with what you're eating, and the liver is sluggish, it can't produce enough insulin to match the blood that's building up in the bloodstream for you to even use to keep you balanced. Right? So the question that I asked, that I posed about why is a person with type 2 diabetes, why are they in basically in jeopardy of having an overworked liver? Their liver is already overworked. That's why they have type 2 diabetes to begin with. So it's fascinating, you guys, how this body works. It goes in one big circle, all interrelated. Let's look at and this, let me say that if we keep with this vicious cycle of the body not really knowing how to use the sugar because the liver is overworked, and then it's jeopardizing the pancreas, and then the pancreas becomes overworked and it's not secreting like it's supposed to, eventually the body will become insulin dependent, and you'll find yourself on insulin and given the synthetic version of that insulin because the body just can't do it, because the liver is just too overworked with as many tasks that it has to perform that it can't protect the pancreas, right? And so how can stress impact the liver? How can stress impact the liver, you guys? What do you want to share with them about that?
So I'll go first. I mean, when you think of stress, the body releases cortisol, epinephrine, and the fight or flight hormones. And so when it secretes the fight or flight hormones, it's so focused on managing the stress in the body that it's no longer able to work. The liver is not even able to function at its best. So it's almost like I've taken all the responsibilities of managing the body and pushed it all over to manage the stress. And in turn, it creates an imbalance in the liver and it really the rest of the body. So it's more of a fight or flight. Let's address the stress, and instead of using the cortisol and the liver work as it needs to.
And then consistently being stressed just causes more damage to the liver faster. And then that's when, because a lot of times, like you said, you don't know that it's happening until it shows up, right? But then that's when you start having so many of those symptoms that we talked about, and you literally can check off everything on the list just because now it's happening so much. Because most of the times when you hear people talk about stress, it's constant. It's very rarely just one thing and then they can move on. It's usually constant, like you said, because we do live in a place where more people have health issues than not. So if you were to look at a lot of people and ask them some questions, more than likely they're stressed daily. So most of us have been putting our liver under so much pressure just because the cortisol levels are always increased.
So Yvonne has a question. She asked if someone experienced.
Hold on, let me put it on the screen.
Okay, awesome.
Go ahead.
So if someone experienced one or more of the symptoms you mentioned, what type of follow-up would you recommend?
If someone experienced more or one of the symptoms, what type of follow-up? Well, Yvonne, with that's a blanket question. You haven't really asked a direct question, and I think that too is an issue because we've been taught to blanket our body systems and symptoms. So there isn't really a specific answer for that because you really haven't given us much to dig into, if you will. And I know that this is kind of a public forum, but if there is like a specific question that you want to ask around a symptom that you've recognized during this talk that is indicating that there's some imbalance with your liver, that would be a better way for us to kind of speak to you about what's happening. It's still not going to be an in-depth conversation where we can, resolve your issue in this space, but we can definitely give you direction. But this question is not, is too broad for us to really give you any answers with that. And so I also want to add that with stress, a person who is stressed out or who has something called adrenal fatigue, if you will, once again, let's go back to looking at how the liver plays a role in that. When a person is stressed out, the very first thing that registers is in the brain, that a person perceives a physical threat or a threat that's in their mind. Well, what has to happen is the hypothalamus that's located in the brain has to trigger the pituitary gland, which is also located in the brain, to say secrete cortisol, epinephrine. Cortisol is going to be the main hormone that's going to be secreted because it's the stress hormone. But epinephrine or adrenaline is secreted along with that from the adrenal cortex. But the trigger is happening in the brain to get that started, right? But when that happens, when the cortisol has to happen, be secreted, that's not the only thing that has to happen. In order for the cortisol to be secreted and for the body to have the energy to be able to acclimate, here we go back again. The cortisol is secreted, and then the liver is triggered to release stored sugar. So if you are constantly staying in a chronic state of stress, right? You got the pedal to the metal with the cortisol all day, all night, every day, because some things are going on. You know, if the body has to continue to secrete sugar to keep up with this, you got to keep asking the liver for another favor after another favor after another favor. And not only that, guess who else got to be in on the favor? That poor little pancreas that's looking for the liver to protect it, and the liver can't because it's in a war zone, because there's so many things that it's responsible for, including the pancreas, but the pancreas can't get no love because the liver is on guard for everything else. So now it's supposed to secrete insulin, but it's tired because every day you're in this state of chronic stress. So you're overworking the pancreas and the liver because your adrenal glands are saying, I'm secreting more cortisol because you perceive a threat, whether it's a threat in your mind because you're overworked and you got to figure out how you're going to get it all done, or whether it is really a threat. You've gotten into a car accident or almost got into a car accident. You had a death in the family. You slipped and fell, or, you know, whatever the threat is. But typically with adrenal fatigue, it's because it's our lifestyle and we pile so much on our plate that we're not getting adequate sleep and we're not eating correctly, and we stay stressed because we're burning the candle at both ends, trying to meet the demands that we're placing on ourselves. So the body has to continue to secrete sugar in order to keep up with that because that's its source of energy. But the pancreas can't keep up with that. So this sugar keeps building up in the bloodstream and the liver keeps overworking, and eventually you find yourself probably running into a type 2 diabetes situation if you didn't already have it.
Right.
You know, so the body is so phenomenal in the way that it is created. So phenomenal. Let's move on to how can anger, this is always one of my favorite ones. How can anger and resentment affect the liver? Because I know y'all ain't really probably ever heard this. How does my emotions, I got it, Nicola. How does my emotions have anything to do with my liver? Who wants to expound on that?
This one. I mean, I can start. When you think of an emotion, it's almost similar to the fight or flight, because an emotion of anger and resentment is associated with the liver. So anger could also be seen as like a fight or flight. It works with the brain, the same kind of message from the pituitary gland to the hypothalamus to secrete hormones from the adrenal glands. That's also happening when you're angry, when you have resentment. And so there again is taxing the liver to have to work with the brain to keep secreting those fight or flight hormones. So that's a piece of it that happens. And chronically, if that keeps happening, then the liver is tired. It's just tired of having to manage all that stress, that anger and resentment that you have that affects your liver.
Absolutely. You want to chime in, Dania?
I think what was interesting, how it starts to create more bowel and your body becomes toxic. When you think about people and you talk to them about their health issues, most of them have some underlying, anger, resentment. I feel like we all are dealing with something, but when you talk to a lot of people, you're like, wow, it's so deep. The body is like holding in all that stuff, and it's such a toxic environment. The liver is just, all it knows to do is create more bowel.
That's good. It's really interesting. Again, like I said, the body is so fascinating that, again, we like to compartmentalize things, and we like to separate the mind, body, spirit experience, from one another. And it's no different than your fight or flight. Like Nicola said, if you become scared, what's the first thing? It's like, it's a pit in your stomach, and you feel something fall, or you get butterflies, or you get diarrhea. It's these emotions. All of this adrenaline starts rushing, and you get, flushed, you get hot, or whatever it is. So you can't compartmentalize what's happening in your mind and those emotional experiences from what's happening with the body. They're all interrelated. You were going to say something else, Nicola?
I think the interesting part is when it's in your subconscious, when it's something that's so far buried in your subconscious that you don't really identify what's happening. You know that you're having that fight or flight, that adrenaline taste in your mouth, but you really don't know where it's coming from. That's the part that, to me, is fascinating, that you can have something that you packed away so years ago that you completely forgot about it, and yet it's still affecting your body. So the emotional piece that we have to manage is key just for overall body health and wellness. So that's the part that I think is fascinating.
I want to add this, that pretty much 90%, science says 90% of our behaviors are subconscious. So the thing is that the subconscious rules is what it is. The subconscious rules. So it's not out of sight, out of mind, because these are things that are triggered, and you may not necessarily attribute them to your envious feelings, to your resentful feelings, to your jealousy feelings. All of that is in the liver. And you may be embarrassed to let people know that you're envious, jealous, resentful, possessive, obsessive, right? Because all of those feelings are related to the liver. But because you don't speak on them doesn't mean that they're not hindering you, doesn't mean that they don't exist. And a lot of times we got to put things so far back in our minds that we think, because they way back there, I put that in the box, I sealed it up, I threw it away, I don't have to deal with it, it's gone, it went away. But no, there's so many different traumas that happen in our lives that when certain instances come up, and you sitting there wondering, why is Nicola 50 and she acting like she 5? Right?
Or I think like how you mentioned, I think even how you mentioned, like being in a car. If you've had a car accident that was very bad, anytime you feel like you're about to have another car accident, your body feels a certain way, whether you forgot about that car accident or not. You get tense. So like you said, it happens.
It happens. And so it's not out of sight, out of mind. It's out of sight in subconscious mind, basically, is what it is. Let's get to Carrie Lynn Blanton. She's been patiently waiting. She says, I'm type 2 diabetic on metformin and Lipitor, also lisinopril for high blood pressure. How do I overcome all the undisclosed side effects all meds are producing? Hair is totally thinning. Carrie. So good questions, very, very good questions, and very, very characteristic of metabolic syndrome. Very characteristic of metabolic syndrome. But here's the thing, is that a person, or like myself, Dania, or Nicola, we would definitely have to look at A1C, serum glucose, total cholesterol, HDL, LDL, triglycerides, looking at, circulatory factors, kidney function, all of those things, so that as a whole, looking at your blood test, we can see where you are. But for the most part, we are not in a space as paramedical professionals to say, Carrie, stop taking metformin, stop taking Lipitor, stop taking lisinopril, because they're giving you hair loss. So we got to figure out a better way. No, we have to start making the necessary changes in our lifestyle, because it's the diehard habits that got us to this space that have been years and years compounding on top of years that has us taking metformin, Lipitor, and lisinopril. So it's in order to make a change, all change happens based on mindset, psychology first. So you have to be aware of all of the instances that have gotten you to this space and be ready to let go and release those things. But you can't release the medication first. You have to start making small baby step changes on a day-to-day basis before you can start showing the doctor that your A1C is in a good percentage, that your serum glucose is in a good space, and that your total triglycerides are good, and that your blood pressure is okay. Now, in some instances, your blood pressure typically may not even be high, but they may have you on a blood pressure med just as precaution. So making those changes gradually so that you can get your numbers back into a conventional range that is considered normal. And notice I said conventional range. Into a conventional range that is normal, because we as trichologists are going to look at things from an optimal range when we look at blood tests. But we're looking at the doctors to take you off of the medicine and not you just taking yourself off, because there could be a lot of harm done if you just cold turkey come off of your meds. So there's a way to do it. But in order to really coach you through that, is something that you need to be working directly with one of us for, so that we can look at your numbers on an individual basis, look at your history to see, where your hair is thinning, is it overall, what your lifestyle looks like, look at your health history, and all of those things together dial in a plan that is going to work you towards homeostasis and staying in the loop with your doctor so that they can monitor your A1C. I'm not sure if you're going every 90 to 120 days or every 6 months to get your, blood levels checked to make sure that you're within the range that your doctor wants you to be in. So I just want to make sure that we're giving you the guidance in a blanket statement, but if you want specific support, you're going to have to definitely work with one of us one-on-one. Yes, I have been taking off insulin 3 months with meal prepping and exercising. A1C was 9.9, now it's 5.5, but I feel I may slip back into that lifestyle. Well, if you 9.9 and you're now at a 5.5, you're doing excellent. And congratulations on all of your hard work, because I know it wasn't easy. The one thing that I would like to encourage you to do now is to look at your mental habits, because if you're in fear that you're going to fall back into that lifestyle, that has to do with your mental habits and emotional eating, or having some unhealed areas in your life that will cause you to fall off of all of this hard work. So getting the emotional support that you need, because you've already done the work, Carrie. You've already gotten yourself to a space where you know what to do, and you see the history, you see how you're tracking, you see that it works. So now the only thing you need to do is get yourself in a space to get some emotional healing, because it sounds like you've not healed the trauma that has caused all of this in the first place. So I think you really need to look at some emotional counseling in order to stay the course, if you will.
Absolutely. I mean, I would say kudos for her for realizing that she's in that space that she might be able to slip. So this is the fact that you're aware of that. That's huge. So now that it's just like I said, do the emotional work so you can stay where you are and choose yourself and choose your health. That's awesome. But that is great. Your results are great. So
yes, but that's good stuff, Carrie. Thank you for sharing. That's awesome. Not many people can say this, 9.9 to a 5.5, so that's good work. Why does a person with a less than optimally functioning liver run the risk of being vitamin D deficient?
you want to take it in here?
Yes. So if the liver is functioning at a low rate, it can't metabolize the vitamin D the way it's supposed to. So vitamin D has to be metabolized into the active hormone calcitriol. But if your liver is already not functioning at optimal level, like Nicola said, it might be stressed all the time. You might be piling fats and sugars and caffeine on it, not sleeping fully. The body, it can only do so much, and it could be very forgiving, but we have to take care of it first.
Absolutely. And to add to that, Dania, vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin. So if you're already having a challenged liver and you can't digest fats, process any kind of fats, then that will be one of the reasons why we don't have a good uptake of vitamin D, which is essential for. We could be here all day long, but it's so essential for a lot of moving parts of the body. But the main reason is because it's fat soluble, and if the liver is challenged, then it's not able to digest fats. Metabolized fats.
And then also taking into consideration if a person has any gastrointestinal dysbiosis, if they are not going to be able to absorb it through the gastrointestinal system to begin with. So they possibly could be vitamin D deficient. But these are all very, very good reasons why a person may be vitamin D deficient. And as a result, their immunity could be compromised as well, because vitamin D plays a huge role in supporting immunity. Hey, Jessica.
Hey.
Yes.
And so good information. Also, a person with vitamin D deficiency definitely will be at a higher risk for type 2 diabetes as well, just so that you know, you guys in the audience know that. What overworks the liver? And I think talking about that overall throughout our conversation, but just in case, you guys are just joining us and are wondering, what is this all about? We're here today as we reset. We're here today because we want to bring some things to your attention that conventional medicine may not be discussing with you. Conventional medicine, their job is to prescribe. Their job is to get the body back into balance by any means necessary. And a lot of times, their methodology of doing that causes other issues, because the medications will start causing side effects and other deficiencies, imbalances within the body that lead to other problems or other symptoms. So we always like to say, as paramedical professionals, holistic health practitioners, that the best method is to try to get the body back into balance the most organic way. And that is always going to be through what's on the tip of your fork. The way that, and meditation and getting good rest and resetting, the body, having healthy relationships, all of these things that bring about balance as a whole, within the body. But recapping that, you ladies want to just kind of highlight a few key factors on what overworks the liver?
It's diet and lifestyle in a nutshell. It's what you actually eat. The diet is rich in fatty foods, processed foods, high sugar foods, a lot of alcohol. That in itself, from a diet perspective, that's going to tax the liver. And then your lifestyle. If you're out, if your job is an overnight worker, your work when your liver should be detoxifying itself. So that in itself would be a reason why we find that overnight workers may possibly have a fatty liver. So lifestyle, you don't sleep, you're out, you constantly in a chronic state of stress. All those things come together and can affect how your liver actually functions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. You want to add anything to that, Dania?
I just want to add, because I know we talked about like the lifestyle and what you eat. A lot of times people think that even if they eat things that are not prepackaged, it's also what you season your food with, how you cook your food down. Like that, you can't go home and add sugar and think you have a healthy lifestyle. Like all of that plays a key role in your day-to-day life and how your body responds.
Absolutely. That's a good point. That's a great point.
Yep, absolutely. Okay. So what is the connection with estrogen dominance in the overrun liver, y'all?
It makes me think about a hamster in a wheel just turning. because that's exactly what the estrogen does in your body. It just keeps flowing through your bloodstream because the liver can't properly get rid of the excess. So it's just always going around in a circle in your bloodstream, and then you have more estrogen, even though it's more estrogen than the rest of the hormones. So then your body is like, okay, here's the estrogen. It's always circulating. So that's why I think of it as a hamster in a wheel, because that's what, remember, it's like it never stops.
Never stop.
Mhm. That's a good analogy. Nicola, you want to add anything to that?
No, because I'm having a brain freeze right now. I'm just kidding. 100. I'm having a brain freeze.
I think Dania summed it up though. I think her analogy was really good in how she says, it's like a hamster in a wheel. We like to think of all of the toxins as things that should not be in our body. So I'm going to sum it up and end it up with this. We like to think of toxins as things that shouldn't be in the body, right? But estrogen we need estrogen. Men and women both need estrogen, right? So how the heck can we, how can it be bad for us if we need it, right? But remember I said before, it could be hypo or hyper. And in this case, we're talking about hyper because the body is supposed to release unneeded estrogen through the liver. And because it becomes sluggish and backed up, it can't do it. So that it starts building up, and then it starts causing symptoms like PMS. It starts causing symptoms, situations of endometriosis and so many other issues in the body, right? So that was pretty good, Dania. We won't have to hang out there because you nailed that one right on at the first shot.
Thank you, Dania.
You're welcome.
Teamwork.
So lastly, you guys, we're going to be closing out because we promised we were not going to be, hold you guys long today. And it's 12 minutes after the hour. So, and we didn't start directly on the hour. So we're about maybe 6 minutes over our time. So can you guys share any tips to help balance the liver daily? Like, with the daily choices that are being made, because that's when you look at it on a small scale, it has to be daily choices. And I think that we get stuck and overwhelmed because we are looking at the big picture and we're not looking at it, in a macro or micro situation. And it comes down to every day, every minute. So how can we support people and just giving them a generalized idea of how to make better choices where their liver is concerned to love on it a little more?
For sure, Kai. I would say one of the most important parts is managing your emotions. And what I do daily is I do meditation. When I get up in the morning, the first thing I do is I read my Bible and I do my meditation. And that keeps me level for the day. And I also meditate at night. 10, 15 minutes is not a lot of time. But if I find myself in a situation where I'm getting stressed, I stop and I really actually do deep breathing. And it may sound very simple, but that helps me manage and keep myself in not stress-free, but my day is a completely different day. So meditation and prayer and deep breathing, you'd be surprised how we don't use our full lung capacity, and taking deep breaths will also help. So I think that part is key.
That's good.
I think one of the things that we really don't think about is how late we eat. Your liver has to work harder when you're eating, especially heavy meals, because our dinner is usually the biggest meal of the day. But when you eat so late, then you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm so tired. And you're like, oh, I'm not a morning person. No, you just have a sluggish liver because your liver has not been able to work properly, and it's still working that next morning at 8 a.m. And it should be by then you flowing into your morning, getting your breakfast and getting what you need. So definitely preparing our meals better, or like Nicola said, taking time in a day, even if you're working from home right now, taking small times to get things together. Whether that means you need to use some nuts for a snack in Ziploc baggies, so you won't grab some chips, or you need to get more vegetables at the grocery store and go ahead and cut them up so you can cook them throughout the week. Doing things like that, so you automatically are preparing yourself to eat better meals. You are going to bed with healthier food on your stomach, and you're not waking up tired because you haven't overworked your body while it was supposed to be doing its job.
Absolutely. I think that was good. My thing that I want to share is that I think that people shouldn't be eating anything other than fruits. Until up until noon, because the liver still needs time to reset itself, even though it detoxifies between 1 and 3 a.m. You know, the body's clock, if you look at how a person is supposed to eat based on how the body detoxifies itself, we shouldn't be eating anything other than fruit in the morning up until noon. That will support the body's detoxification system with that, because fruit is going to help to flush. Fruit is going to help to replenish. So those are some really really great tips. If you guys, you know, have taken anything away that has left you having more questions, that you know you feel like you need more direction and guidance, you really need more understanding, or you just like, you know, I need to go have a talk with my doctor now because I'm noticing everything that these ladies are saying, you know, that's me right there, you know, right? Then I suggest that you don't delay, that either you go to your doctor and start asking questions, but really I highly suggest contacting one of us on this panel, because we work as a liaison between you and your doctor. And if you try and go to your doctor just with the information that you've learned on this broadcast, it's not going to be enough to support you. It's not enough ammunition. It still leaves the doctor on a wild goose chase, and they're not going to really be able to render the support that you deserve. But if you connect with one of us, myself, Dania, or Nicola, we will be able to do an assessment. It's not a free assessment. Of course, it is a charge for the assessment. However, I feel like it's worth it because it's going to give you a better understanding of how your physiology is working. And then from there, we could teach you how to go and ask the proper questions to your doctor so that you can get that support without having a clear understanding of what's happening with you. You can't go into the doctor's office and ask direct questions. You're still asking open-ended questions, and then you're getting open-ended answers that are not really directly supporting you. So we work as a liaison, you know, between you and your doctor to enhance that doctor's visit so that you can find out what's happening with you sooner, quicker, faster, especially, you know, if you're experiencing hair loss. That's the symptom that's sounding the alarm. Remember, hair loss is just a symptom. It's just what's sounding the alarm. There's something much greater going on inside of your body that needs to be addressed, that you need the support of a trichologist in order to really get to the root of, in connection with your medical professional. So if you've learned anything and you love this, we would love to hear your comments, you know, read your comments. Also, if you need support, we would love for you to reach out to one of us. If you're looking to get in contact with one of us, just post on the chat on the timeline and say, hey, you know, what's the best way? So that way you can get in contact directly with one of us. Jessica says, I love tuning in, and I will say that I'm healthy mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually because of connecting and knowing what to ask for, etc. Thanks, ladies. That's awesome. You know, it's one thing to understand the physiology as they've written it out in health books, but it's another thing to understand physiology as it relates to your body, and that is empowerment. When you can understand how to interpret the language your body is speaking directly to you, not to anybody else, not what anybody else's body is doing, not what a statistic says that the body should be doing, none of that, but what your body is saying. You can understand that, therefore you can react with more education so that you can address the underlying cause sooner, quicker, faster. So once again, it's not about hair health. It's about hair health and wellness overall, dealing with the whole person. You guys, we really appreciate your tuning in with us on YouTube and Facebook. You know, thank you for being with us live. If you're catching us on the replay, thank you so much. If you have questions, even if you were on the live and you have questions later, come back to this video, post your questions there, or go into our inbox directly to ask the more private, personal questions. If you want to get in contact with one of us, reach out to us on this timeline, and then one of us will answer back telling you how to get in contact with us. Okay. So
jump off. I want to acknowledge Denise Hewitt. She's been saying great information. So I just want to acknowledge that, we saw her comment, and thank you for participating.
All right. So you guys, we're getting ready to go ahead and end it. You're welcome, Megan. We're going to go ahead and end it. You guys have a beautiful Sunday and an amazing week. Be good to yourselves, and we will see you. What is this, May? We'll see you in July for some more view, and you'll get the view of myself, Nicola, and Dania. All right. Talk to you soon.
Good night, y'all.
Good night.
Good night.